Hey, welcome back to the Hometown Hustle podcast with another real estate edition. Today we sit down with not another real estate broker, but a very important professional within the industry. Now, she's so important that most people have no idea who she is or what she does. Hopefully we can change that today because our guest is none other than the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors and the Southern Oregon Multiple Listing Service, Miss Tine Grimes. Now, Tine has been with the association for over 22 years and has served as CEO for 12 of those years. So needless to say, she has a wealth of experience that we can all benefit from. Now, there's a lot to unpack in this episode as Tine explains things like what an association of realtors and multiple listing service actually does for both real estate professionals and private property owners alike. She also touches on what she feels are the 5 most important things you can do in order to ensure success in this business. Let's get started. What's up, Tine?
Hello.
Hello again. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is cool. We got a lot to talk about today. A lot of great stuff, but just for those who don't know who you are, just introduce yourself and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm Tine Grimes. I am the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors and the Southern Oregon Multiple Listing Service, 2 separate corporations. So it's a lot.
I bet it is a lot.
Because then there's also 2 subsidiary stuff in there. So ultimately, I'm running 4 different companies.
4 different companies.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot, but I love it.
Do you have like 4 paychecks that come in?
I wish.
You wish? Yeah.
Hey, you're on the board. Maybe you could start helping with some of these things.
I'm on a 1-year position, so I think they did that on purpose. If this guy sucks, we can get him out of here in just a year. So anyway, yeah. So
yeah. So I have a friend that I used to. If he was with me and people would say, well, what do you do for a living? Before I could even answer, he would go, no one knows.
Is that done on purpose?
No, it's just hard to explain to somebody who doesn't understand the industry at all. Because a lot of people think they hear the word real estate and they go, oh, automatically you're a real estate broker. Mm-hmm. And so the way I explain it to people is, okay, so people that are real estate brokers and appraisers, they're the 10% of the iceberg that's above the water. Mm-hmm. I'm the 90% that's below the water that no one knows is there. Mm-hmm. Right. Because everything I do is kind of a behind the scenes thing to help you guys do your job better.
Right. Which is why you're here.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But you've been in real estate for like over 20 years, is that right?
Actually, yeah. So I started out what is it? It's coming up on 30 years, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I started in 1995 as the assistant to one of the managing brokers at Windermere Investors Marketplace at the time. Windermere Van Vliet later bought them out, but did that for a couple of years. She decided she didn't want to manage anymore, and I had the opportunity to go to a different company, not related to real estate at all. So I took it, and then about a year and a half into that, she became the president of the board at the association and called me up and said, they need a bookkeeper, get your butt down there.
Yeah.
Mm. And so I went down and applied, and the rest is history. I've been at the association now for 22 and a half years.
Wow. Long time.
So, yeah.
You've been dealing with realtors for that long?
I have.
And you still have all your hair?
See all these gray hairs?
And you're somewhat sane.
Yeah, you have far less gray hairs than I would have thought with dealing with realtors for that long. Robin's been only in it for 2 years, and you can see how much hair he has.
But none of it's gray. So.
But none of it's gray.
There you go.
Yeah, none of it's gray. How would you know?
I think I found one.
How long ago was that, Robin?
It was months.
Oh,
ago.
okay. All right.
It was over here. It was over here.
I couldn't imagine if I only had one gray hair. Oh, yeah, that gray hair.
Well, at first I thought it was like just something wrong. Like it was like a speck of like something that wasn't me. But yeah, it was.
No, it's great.
Awesome.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So in your 22 plus years and kind of going through, have you been chief cook, bottle washer from, bookkeeping to everything? Or did it just go straight from, hey, I'm bookkeeping, now I'm going to throw my hat in as a CEO?
So I was the bookkeeper for about about 2 years, and then the CEO at the time made me his assistant. But that was back when there was only about 600 members. And so as the executive assistant, I also did all the education, assisted him, and there was only 4 of us on staff, so we kind of all knew a little bit of everything.
Right.
So did that and then he retired in 2008. I was his assistant until he retired. When he retired, I just didn't feel like I was quite ready to throw my hat in the ring for his job. So they brought in somebody else and worked under him for 2 years. And then he ended up moving back. He had moved up here from the Bay Area. And it was right when everything crashed, and his family, they couldn't sell their house down there. And his family ended up never moving up here. So after 2 years of him going back and forth every weekend, he said, I can't do this anymore.
That's hard.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And so he resigned. And then at that time I said, okay, now I think I might be ready. So I threw my hat in the ring, and came down to me and one other person. And for reasons I actually understood at the time, they hired the other person. And I stayed on. But she actually only ended up making it about 5 months. Had moved out here from New York and did not realize how different the West Coast was going to be. And she said, I got to go back to New York. And they didn't even do a search when she left. They just said, Tina, do you want it? And at that time, and it all happened exactly the way it was meant to happen. It's too long of a saga to get into right now. But yeah, it was perfect the way it happened. And so I have been the CEO since February of 2011.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you have some sort of unique designation now too, right? That you just got last
I do,
year.
Yeah, it's the CAE, which stands for Certified Association Executive, which is the big granddaddy of all designations that people in my position can get.
Yeah.
Because it's not unique just to realtor associations. It's for any associate, so like medical associations, education associations, trucking associations, any kind of association. This designation is recognized in that world.
Wow.
So
Cool.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's
Thank
cool.
you.
Very cool.
Thank you. It was intense.
Yeah. A lot of work, I bet.
It's a huge amount of work. Over 2,000 pages of reading material.
Oh, gosh.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Is it on audiobook?
Totally out. Totally out.
So really quick, 600 agents. Did you guys catch that? That's when she started?
600?
Yeah.
There were just 600?
There was only 600 agents.
Yeah.
And how many are there now?
Just shy of 14. Well, 1,500 actually, if you count the ones that are MLS only and not RVAR. So
Yeah, it's funny, our counties haven't grown in size. Just the agent count.
Yeah, we make it look real easy, I
We're
guess.
saturated. Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
and I will say we're at record high count right now. We've never had this many members.
Still.
And the amount of members that joined in 21 and into 22 after everybody during the shutdown in 2020 went online and got all their education and got their real estate license. It's insane. We've never had the amount of new members as we had in about an 18-month stretch. It was crazy.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you see that slowing down at all as the market's starting to
The
shift?
number of new members coming in has slowed down dramatically.
Yeah.
I think we do our annual dues billing in July, and it'll be interesting to see how many of those people that have come in the last couple of years stick with it and renew.
Because him and I listened to a similar podcast, and this guy was talking real estate, and he said it was in Vegas. It was Patrick Bet David.
It was Texas, I think.
What did How many agents did he say were leaving?
40% didn't renew in Texas.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that same thing locally here?
Not to that extreme, thankfully. We did see those kind of numbers back in 2007 and 8. We dropped 40% because we were at 1,200 in 2006 and went back down to 650 by 2008. So, so we saw that kind of drop. We haven't seen it yet. Again, we haven't done our annual dues billing yet. So, but I budgeted for a 10% drop, and I'm not sure that was enough.
Wow. Yeah. You feel like it's going to drop a lot just as it gets harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it depends on which economist you listen to. I mean, typically with the economists, you can listen, I have like 4 or 5 that I like to listen to, and they may not be exact, but they're kind of within a range of each other. They are all over the place right now.
And they're all wrong. Like that's the crazy thing. They're all over the place, and they're all
Right.
wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, rates are going to be here by the beginning of spring.
Right.
Nope.
No.
Like the 10-year,
Yeah.
the 10-year is going to be here. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
But going back to, because I follow the members on the move religiously every single Monday, take a look at it, and like we have maybe a net 1 loss because 8 will be getting out, but 7 new ones are coming in. And I've never seen anything like that over the time of watching and monitoring members on the move.
Yeah.
It's almost a net neutral every
Yeah.
single time, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have pegged that for this time of year in the economy that I'm seeing and kind of looking at, 48 closed transactions in Josephine County in January.
Yeah.
Yet to have a net surplus of people coming on board is just mind-boggling.
I honestly expected to see quite a few drops start happening just in the first of the year, but we didn't really experience that.
Yeah.
So like I said, it come June when we send out the dues invoices, I think that's going to be very telling at that point.
Who wants to keep going? Because they just keep it going, right? Until their
Yeah.
dues are up, and then they have to pay the
Yeah.
money, and then
I mean, that makes sense. So if you're not busy in June, then
Yeah.
probably,
No.
you should
Finish the rest of that sentence. I want to hear it.
You should probably leave.
oh boy, here we go.
And they got it.
Then we got
I baited you into that, Ryan, so my apologies, but I just
fine.
needed to hear it.
It's fine.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah, no, it's interesting how the market's changing and all that, but like we were talking about before, that's kind of the point of this podcast too, is we can start educating people on different things that are happening and common best practices, or like what's what in the real estate industry, which is why you're here. So if you would, start with Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, and let's start talking about like the role of RVAR, and maybe some misconceptions about what RVAR actually does for realtors and for the public. Because you also asked this question of me the other day, where you're like, who's our target audience? And I think our target audience is both, really. Okay. It's realtors and it's also the public.
Okay.
Because there is benefits to both for RVAR, and I'm sure the public has no idea. And I'd say that there's a good portion of the real estate brokers who understand at least a little bit, and there's probably a very small portion who actually get it.
Right.
Right. And I would say that I'm even in that portion that understands for the most part, but I don't fully get it.
Yeah.
Even as a board member. So but yeah, so if you just let's just start talking about that. Okay. So
So hilariously, every time somebody asks me where I work and I say Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, always the very next comment is, oh, how's the market doing? How are you doing on selling? No, we're not a real estate brokerage. We're the association. And that's when the eyes glaze over and, I lose them. So the best way I can think of to describe it is, well, first, let me back up. Something that's probably going to even shock you guys. Realtor is not your profession. Realtor is actually just the word, just meaning you are a member of the National Association of Realtors.
right. And we've talked about that on this podcast before, and everybody just says realtors is like that's what we do, but it's definitely not.
I always say NAR did their branding a little too well.
Yeah.
Kind of like when someone says, hand me a Kleenex.
Right.
Well, it's not a Kleenex, it's a tissue. Kleenex is the brand name. Or how all of us in Oregon think all sodas are Cokes. That's a Pacific Northwest thing. Hand me a Coke. You don't mean necessarily a Coca-Cola, you just mean a soda.
Right.
Kind of the same thing. So realtor actually means the realtor membership category is actually real estate licensees and appraisers. So they're all in the realtor membership category.
Which is funny because who we were talking about that was two very experienced, very prominent appraisers in our county.
Okay.
Or in our area too, which is really funny.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know that.
Yeah, no.
So
I would wager, and I'm probably even conservative on this, that 80% of our members don't understand the distinction.
yeah. And they have to do all this, the orientation to even. Yeah.
Yes. But in their defense, they're so overwhelmed with information when they come to orientation that a lot of that I don't think gets retained.
Yeah. I just want to sell houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Got it.
So the association, our job, basically in a nutshell, is to make sure you guys have what you need to do your job. So by becoming a member, you get access to continuing education classes that otherwise you would have to pay separately for, but they're included in your dues. One of the biggest things we do is, which is not sexy, but it's also not something anybody else wants to do, so it's a huge service, is the political advocacy. Because we're all sick of politics. I'm
I believe you.
I don't even like to watch the news anymore. I'm so sick of it. So, so most of the members, they don't want to go talk to their county commissioners about, this land use thing that's being done or that property tax that's being considered. So that's what we do that on your behalf.
Right. But that's also a benefit to the public too, that they may not realize, because the RPAC, the Realtor Political Action Committee, goes not only and fights for rights for realtors, but fights for rights of private property owners as well.
Correct. We are that is a distinction that I'm very proud of. We are the only trade association that actually lobbies for your clients, not just our members.
Right.
We're the only one. Everybody else just lobbies for their own members. So I like that distinction.
Can we work in landlords' rights at some point? And that whole thing going, please, at some point?
Fighting hard for it right now.
Yeah, no, it's a thing for sure.
Good gravy.
Yeah. In fact, I had a long conversation this morning about rent control and how it does the exact opposite of what you think it's going to do.
100%. And
but can't convince people of that.
So you guys do actually also help and function in that as well, correct?
Yes.
Not just land rights, things like that, but
Yes.
helping out the tenants' rights, landlord rights.
Any
situation.
bill or regulatory action that could impact a person's right to have adequate housing, kind of is the best way to impact it, and a person's right to own their own property and benefit from owning their own property. So that's where the landlord piece comes in, and and just getting people to understand, just because you're a landlord doesn't mean you're a slumlord.
Yeah. Or that you have millions.
Right.
Because that's the other side.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
I think everybody comes from it like, oh, you're a landlord, you have millions. Like,
Yeah.
no.
I know
it doesn't
so
work that
many
way.
people that just, that own properties that when, during COVID, when they said, oh, you don't have to pay rent anymore, it crippled them. I mean, they were devastated.
Right.
Because that was their source of income.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing
So-
to know that you guys are that multifaceted to be in that sector as well, as far as housing and just everything across the board. That's pretty neat.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty big, being involved with the Residential Real Estate Council, like going to all the national meetings and things like that. Like in May, there's the legislative meetings in D.C. I mean, I know that's like a huge time of year for RPAC.
Yeah. Well, and just in 2 weeks, we have Oregon Realtor Day at the Capitol.
Right.
Where we'll all be up in Salem, hoping to get about 500 realtors to all hit the Capitol on the same day, and they pay attention when you do that.
Yeah, when you show up in packs, for sure. Yeah, I should probably sign up for that. I've been putting it off.
You should.
There's just so many things I stick my hands in.
Do you have a form with you, Tina? Get them on the books now.
No, I get Noreen's emails constantly. It's
So
yeah.
the education,
That's a shout out for Noreen.
There you
Noreen, executive assistant to Tine Grimes. You made it.
So there's so the advocacy, the education. Another arm of what we do is, as realtors, you have said, I'm going to agree to abide by this code of ethics, which is a step above the license law in requirements. And so we enforce the code of ethics. That's part of what we do. However, it's not like most people think, to where someone can call us up and go, hey, so-and-so did that. Go punish them.
Go slap their hand. It's not that easy.
Put them in real estate jail.
It's a borderline. It's not a legal proceeding because it's a peer review process, but it does follow all the rules of due process. So someone actually has to file a complaint, and then that person has a right to sit in a hearing and face their accuser. I mean, there's a manual about 400 pages fat that we have to follow to enforce the code of ethics. So
yeah. I can guarantee you folks that after sitting through the training for all of that stuff, that it's not somewhere you want to go. So definitely very intense.
So if somebody complains on a national level, right, to NAR or whatever the case may be, then does it trickle down to a local level that
Yes.
you guys just enforce that?
yes, they would. So if somebody called, which it actually does happen quite frequently, where somebody will call the Oregon Realtors, the state level, and they'll say, I have a complaint about so-and-so. They will look them up and go, oh, well, they're a member of Rogue Valley Association. That's who you need to call. And then they give them the number.
Gotcha.
So wherever you are whatever local chapter you're a member of, that's who does the enforcement.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But how often does that happen?
It's feast or famine. Honestly, we'll go months without getting a complaint, and then we'll get 5 or 6 within, a couple weeks. So it just varies.
But very rarely they go all the way through, is what you're saying.
Probably 3-4 times a year. They'll go all the way through, but they don't always result in a violation just because there's a hearing held.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
don't go there.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
stay out of it.
So anyway, enforcing the code of ethics is a big thing, and then probably the last big arm of what we do is providing networking opportunities, and rolled into that is fundraising for a lot of community efforts. So
Yeah, because we just did the Valentine's Day auction
Yep.
not too long ago.
we did, and raised a little over $18,000 for the family house.
Yeah, it's wild. And what a fun event, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was
that's,
a lot of
for those who aren't aware, the Rogue Valley RVR puts on a cake auction, and they get cake donations from the community. We were all there, so we know. But they get
For those that weren't there.
for those that weren't there, they donate cakes, and then they do a live auction with $200, $300. Yeah, who's the person who does the auctioneering is actually a real estate broker too.
Yeah.
Yes, she
So
is.
yeah, so she does an amazing job. So
Yep.
So they just raise a bunch of money through that, and that's a lot of fun. That's a
Yep.
really fun event. And then you guys do the RVR Summer Barbecue, which is
Yep.
really just more of a realtor networking event
Yeah,
than it
that
is
one's just
anything
for
else.
fun.
Yeah,
Yep.
but there's a lot of different stuff. I mean,
I don't think people are aware that you guys also do community grants for first-time homebuyers,
We do.
right? So
Yep.
a lot of people aren't aware that the RVAR $1,000 or it's up to $2,500. I think
Up to
is the-
$2,500. Yeah.
Right, yeah, depending on a lot of people don't know that. When I tell them,
Yeah.
they're surprised.
And of all the grants that are out there, it has probably the least amount of hoops to jump through to get the grant.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're out of money right now.
Sorry about that. You
for grants. I mean, for grants, you guys. I'm on the board. We're not out of money. Tina, God, careful. God.
do we need to start collection plate?
Push that red button over there.
No, and because of COVID, we weren't able to do a lot of fundraising for a couple of years, and so the grant pool ran dry. But we're already in the works of replenishing it. So
Awesome.
by the end of the year, it'll be full again.
Fortified.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. No, and one of the things that you touched on in the questionnaire was that, and it's a great point, because you'd be hard pressed to find a community event or some sort of something in the community where they're doing something good for somebody else, and there's not a realtor involved in it.
Correct.
And I just think that's one of the really cool things that maybe a lot of people don't realize, is that realtors are just super involved in their communities. Why wouldn't they be? I mean, they're trying
Yeah.
to sell these communities, so they try to make them a better place.
Exactly.
And try and contribute to that. But it's huge. I mean, and that's just not just here. I mean, that's
No, it's
everywhere.
a nationwide
Yeah.
statistic. In fact, I meant to look it up before I came and I forgot. But because the National Association just recently put out a statistic where something
You can just make it up. It's fine.
Well,
nobody fact checks.
It's something to the effect of that realtors, on average, realtors are 60% more involved in their communities than any other industry. Something to that. I think it was along those lines. It was over 50%. I remember that. So
Fact checkers, check it out.
there you go. Yeah.
I would completely agree with that. And the interesting thing is, so going through and seeing the life cycles around here and seeing, some of the agents that give, it's not only when times are good, which is very, astounding to me, because everybody, when they have a little jingle in their pocket, happy to be philanthropic and give money out. But really, real estate agents do it good or bad continually.
And I can completely attest to that, because some of our biggest fundraising years have been in the years that were not so good.
Right. Yep.
So,
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool. What else on RVAR that people should know?
let's see. That's like the 4 big areas that we focus on.
In a
yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then let's get into your second of 4 jobs, which is the Southern Oregon Multiple Listing Service.
Right.
Let's get into that a little bit. Give us a
Okay.
brief explanation of the MLS and what it does.
So a little backstory. prior to MLS's existing, which I think the first MLS was formed in the 19 teens, something like that. Interesting enough, Southern Oregon MLS has been around since 1925.
Wow.
That's when it started. But prior to that, the only way for you guys to find out what other realtors had as listings was to just go talk to them. You had to pick up the phone, and then you had to negotiate a fee agreement.
Kind of like how they do it in New York still.
A little bit. Well,
Right? They don't have a multiple listing service in New York,
Oh,
right?
yeah, they do.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they do.
I was told they did.
No, they do.
Liars.
Yeah.
Realtors are liars.
However, I can tell you that right here in Oregon, in Lakeview, they don't use a multiple listing service over there.
Really?
Because there's only 2 real estate offices, and they are right across the street from each other. So they literally just walk across the street and go, "What do you got?"
And there's only 6 houses for sale, so I mean, it's like
Right. So
Lakeview.
The hot sheet is a hot half sheet.
Hot house sheet, yeah.
it's
Population
not
of 27 in Lakeview. No, I'm kidding. I've been to Lakeview. It's not that small.
No.
So, 37 at least.
and half of those are real estate agents, so
That's
it's
right.
easy.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the teens, several brokerages got together and said, how can we make this easier so that we don't have to constantly be reaching out to every single office and asking? And it started in Chicago. And they said, well, what if we created some kind of centralized database that we all put our listings into? We all make an offer of compensation in that. It's a legally binding offer of compensation to those cooperating brokers. That eliminates several hurdles all at once.
Right.
And that's the multiple listing service was born.
So that's actually let's not forget to touch back on that
Sure.
the fee agreement
Yes.
business. Okay, so as we go on, just
Okay.
remind
Yeah.
me to not let that go because that is
Okay.
something that people need to know.
Yes.
Okay. So,
So over the years, obviously with technology, it has morphed. Actually, when I first started working 22 and a half years ago, when I started working there, we were still publishing the book every 2 weeks. Looked like a phone book, but it had all the multiple listings in it. And when you got that book, the data was already a week old because we had to send it in a week before so the book could get published. So you were still having to make a lot of phone calls and ask if there was a listing you found that was interesting. You still had to make a phone call and go, is it still for sale or is it pending by now? You know? So it still wasn't real current. And so having actual multiple listing software platforms that you guys put your listings into, you can go look it up at any time, has really kind of revolutionized things and made it so much easier.
yeah.
I think on one hand, it made it super easy, but I think it also created the competitive market that we're seeing, right? It gets more and more competitive as those properties hit.
Right.
The quicker, I think at this point, that consumers see it before agents even see it in a lot of cases, which then, just kind of makes it.
Well, that would be a whole nother podcast we'd have to do where I feel like people at the national level didn't have enough foresight and allowed
Other companies
to step in and take over what should have been the National Association of Realtors doing it. Personal opinion.
Yeah.
But whole other podcast, because
Sidebar.
that would
Yeah.
take us a long time.
Yeah, but then
That's
it's
very
just
interesting. I mean, great point. They should have been able to capitalize on that and then either did a joint venture with the big company that starts with a Z or not, right, and go from there.
It's one of your competitors, so be careful.
I said it very easy.
no, he's not his competitor.
Yes, it is, because they're a brokerage now.
I mean, mortgage broker.
Lenders.
Oh,
and they
yeah,
do
no,
too.
never mind,
They
you're
do
right.
as well. Yeah. This guy.
Forgot.
I didn't say it.
I was thinking he was a realtor.
I didn't say it.
So I can go?
You've already been bleeped on this podcast for those same offenses.
I said that
And it's funny though because he really throws you under the bus with the whole thing.
What's funny is I had another real estate broker reach out to me the other day who's watched the podcast, and she's like, "Why did you bleep that?" And I was just like, "Well, it's because it's a code of ethics violation to talk poorly about another brokerage." And we weren't talking poorly, but it was just kind of a fun joke, just to
Right.
yeah, bleep bleep, yeah, beep beep beep. Anyway,
So, anyways, I think that's a great idea, and I think it was a big missed opportunity for NAR.
And I think that they
that's a
see
great
it now, but at the time,
hindsight.
yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So
Yeah.
the technology has created its own unique challenges with things. One of the not so good things I've seen happen with it is, especially with agents coming into the business who maybe never knew what it was like before. And they just rely on what they see in that database, and they don't take the time to build the relationships with their fellow brokers and with the affiliates. And this is something I tell every new member orientation class we have. I don't care how fancy technology gets. I don't care how many shiny squirrels are out there with technology. This is still a relationship-based industry at its heart. And if you're not forming relationships and building trust, you will fail.
Yeah. It's something that we've harped on a lot on the podcast here about, relationship based. And it's not just building relationships with your clients and the people in the community. It is, honestly, it's other real estate brokers.
Yep.
Like Dan and I have done a lot of business together as a lender and a real estate broker. I've worked with him 10 times, 20 times more than I've worked with my best clients.
Right.
So it's like building relationships with people like this in the industry or other real estate brokers is incredibly important because you're more likely to work with them.
Yep.
On an ongoing basis.
On an ongoing basis.
Well, one of the most unique, it's unlike any other industry in the sense that you're going out and you're cooperating with your competitors every day. I mean, that's how you do your job.
Right.
Sometimes cooperating. Let's be honest.
Hey, we weren't going to bash on realtors in this.
I'm not. We're not bashing on realtors.
Yeah.
I'm just saying sometimes it's a cooperative thing. Sometimes it's not.
Well, and I like a phrase that one of our other board members coined a few years ago. He said, "We're all in co-opetition."
Competition.
But it is unique in that you don't see JCPenney's and Macy's going, "Hey, let's get together and make this sale even better."
Yeah.
They don't. That's just, it doesn't happen in any other industry.
Nope.
So building those relationships with others outside your firm is vital to your success as a real estate agent. Not only with other real estate agents, but like we said, with the affiliates, with the lenders, with the title companies, because they're all important to making sure the transaction gets done successfully.
Right.
And the next transaction, and the next one,
Exactly.
and the next one,
Exactly.
and the
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's huge. It's a big piece that people need to, they definitely need to do that.
Yep.
So, and that's kind of the point of the podcast too, is like, people can now look at you and see, they may not have even met you before, but they've seen you on the podcast and they kind of know what you're about and all that. So it's a lot easier for them to make a relationship with you,
Right.
When they see you. So
Exactly.
Yeah. I ran into somebody the other day that I know from Instagram and that I follow on Instagram. And so this person's kind of InstaFamous in this field
Right.
that I was, but I ran into him and I said hi, like I introduced myself. Hey, you probably don't know who I am, but I know who you are and this and that. And it was just so awkward. It was just so like, I just felt like, wow, what an idiot, like he has no idea who I am, but he should know. If he's Insta-famous, then he should probably know. Yeah. But it was just, but that's probably.
Is that a real phrase? Hold on. Before he just gets away with saying Insta-famous, are we going to call him out? Is that a real
I've heard
thing?
it before, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Not just from him?
No, like from
Dan, you don't have an
Instagram.
Instagram. Shut up.
Do my bullshit meter.
This is the guy. He has an Instagram, but he's probably never even seen it. He doesn't even know what it's called.
And I don't
think
even
I have.
have one. So
You do.
Oh, I do.
You do.
Thank you, Erica.
Team Doyle, Nations Lending. Erica, what's up? Thanks for Dan's Instagram. I tag him in it all the time. He has no idea.
Erica just makes stuff happen. I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's
You
great.
don't even know what Instagram is, so don't
I
check
just-
me on that.
Insta-famous, I didn't know.
It is Insta-famous. It means like you're famous on Instagram, but like you're not
Maybe
really famous.
Maybe I'm Insta-famous and don't even know it.
You're not.
You're not. No.
Fair enough.
You're famous because of me.
That's true.
Yeah. On YouTube anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. So the other agent I was talking to the other day was Cody Lukabaugh.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, that bearded guy, why did they bleep him out? And I was like, that's Dan Doyle, right? And she's like, oh, okay. It's because you don't put your face on anything, Doyle.
I don't.
Yeah, nobody knows what you look like. Okay, so anybody watching the podcast, you see this man right here. This is Dan Doyle from Nations Lending. He's a really good loan originator, mortgage professional here in Southern Oregon.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next.
Next. Anyway, now that we can embarrass my friend here. So.
Thank you. Is it hot in here? Yes.
That's what you get for calling me out.
Yeah, fair enough.
there you go.
So,
That was fun.
yeah.
All right, let's go back to this MLS business.
Right, yeah. So we're talking MLS, and
Yeah.
one of the questions I have is, we have one of your competitors. Can I say the other competitor?
Yeah.
Of course.
So like, our MLS, and then we have Flex MLS now. And what was the decision, right? Because several months ago, or maybe a year now, that decision to switch out and then go with Flex versus having RMLS go kind of all throughout the state of Oregon. What made that decision, and why did that happen? Because I, even as a lender, heard about it from my side in working with real estate agents.
This is a really good misconception too.
It
I'm
is.
glad he asked the question the way he did. So go for it.
Yeah. So first of all, Flex MLS is just the software platform. That's all it is.
We used to have Rapatoni.
We used to have Rapatoni.
and
Now we
it's-
have Flex MLS. It's just the software platform.
Gotcha.
So Southern Oregon MLS is, and always, that's what it's always been.
Gotcha.
So what happened, and it because time flies, it was actually April of 2020 when we switched.
Crazy.
What a time to make a change.
Right? Yeah, I tell people,
right when I
if you
started.
can do an MLS system conversion in the middle of a pandemic, you're golden.
Right. You can live through anything.
Right?
Everybody's at home. Everybody's doing stuff. Well, click. Guess we're gonna do this now. hit the
Right?
switch. Yeah.
So, what led to that is that we were on Rapatoni, perfectly fine platform, but we started talking with the Klamath County MLS and also the Central Oregon MLS about forming a shared database. Just cover more territory, provide more data exposure, just be able to grab more data points because these days it's all about the data.
Correct.
So started talking about them about having a shared database and realized that at the same time we needed to look at the MLS vendors that are out there, software vendors, and go, okay, who can do this service for us the way we want to do it the best? And reached the decision to switch to Flex MLS and launched that. As far as not going with our MLS, for us, it was just about the fact that we provide a solid service to our members, and we don't see any reason to give that up. We like the local control. We like to be able to say, this is what we want in our database. These are the fields that we need. We wouldn't have that if we gave up our MLS to our MLS.
Gotcha.
So for us, it was just about maintaining that local ability to have the fields we want to have, to do what we want with our data.
Yeah.
So
As real estate agents, do you guys find people coming in from Douglas County and other areas almost, from my perspective, I feel like they use it as a reason to not come and show properties or to have you help out more in that Douglas County versus Josephine? Have you guys experienced anything with that?
Very little.
Very little. Yeah. But I mean, I won't go into Douglas County just because of that. Like, I just won't.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have any interest. I have a listing over in Brookings right now, and they use RMLS also. And I would have gone over there and done it if it was all the same multiple listing service, but I just have no desire to
switch
to sign up and to do all the stuff and learn the whole new platform and all that kind of stuff. I just referred it out. Like, it was just easier to do it that way.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've only done it once. And it was fun because I got to go
Yeah. You were
look
going.
at properties
Yeah.
on the beach.
And there's nothing preventing someone from belonging to as many MLSs as they want to. I mean,
Yeah.
so I know quite,
And it's
there's
a nominal fee, I mean, quite candidly, but yeah, it's probably the more effort behind it of learning it.
Learning the multiple listings, learning the different nuances and stuff. And so, I mean, we have a subscription through the office to RMLS that we can go in, like, if we want to look at property and things like that. But when it comes to like inputting listings, I would have to sign up for my own stuff. And it was just, I tried to go and like look for comparables. I was doing a market analysis, and it was like impossible to do. Like, it's just,
and I'm kind of that person. I don't want to be a specialist in something I do very rarely. I would rather refer it out and have somebody who is better at it manage it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of real estate agents, I think sometimes they look at it as a missed opportunity, when
I had a client that was wanting to see a property that was here locally, but it was on the RMLS. And I didn't know that. Like, it was hard to find. Like, it confused me. And finally, Tiffany was like, "Did you look at the RMLS?" I was like, "Oh, I never even thought of that."
yeah, I've had that too. And that's very hard.
Yeah,
And
the agent was from Portland.
yeah. And that's just what they use, and they just assume that we all use that multiple listing service, but very rarely do we ever even go in there. I've had that situation before where somebody sent me a property that they saw on Zillow, and I just, I didn't see it. Right. I was like, where in the heck is it? And so I had to like go and find it.
Now
So,
I definitely make a point of every now and then, if I'm looking for something for somebody and we haven't found anything, that I'll check it just to see if there's anything there.
yeah.
Well, and I'll do a shameless plug just a moment. So there's a program out there called Realtors Property Resource that NAR provides to all Realtor members. And we actually, we have it so that on RPR, you can see all of the data of all the other MLSs in the state. They can see ours. So if you go on RPR, you can see what's in every MLS.
See, there you go.
You don't have an offer of compensation, or because it's not an MLS, it's
Right.
just a database.
Yeah.
But you can at least see where it is and what MLS it's currently listed with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that, but RPR is a great
and you
resource.
can run a lot of CMAs out of that. They've got some stellar CMA packages in there. You should check it out.
I do mine a little different than most people. Yeah, I don't just push the button and go. So,
Well,
yeah, I do.
To the average agent out there, it could be a resource manual.
Just saying, I'm a little picky about how I do stuff. So, anyway,
A little.
I have no idea what you.
Hey, screw you guys. Screw you again. I'm going. Anyway. Sorry for the interruption. Just wanted to remind you that if you're enjoying the podcast, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. It is the best way to support the channel, and without your support, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you, and let's get back to it. So since you mentioned offer of compensation,
yeah.
and we're on the topic of multiple listing service, let's get into that real quick, because I do
Sure.
think the multiple listing service does a lot of things, but I think that's one thing that realtors, real estate brokers, I should say, not realtors specifically, that real estate brokers don't get is that the multiple listing service is your fee agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So when you write an offer on a piece of property, that BAC, buyer's agent percentage or commission percentage, is your fee agreement. And
Yes.
so that's what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
If you were to go like make an offer on a for sale by owner or a house that was listed for sale by the seller or by the owner, you have to get a fee agreement because there's no multiple listing service that says that
Correct.
you're getting that number or whatever that
Correct.
is. So
Yep. And it's the MLS system is something that is envied in other countries. Actually, Mexico is trying to set up this kind of a platform in Mexico for real estate brokers in Mexico because they see how well it works here in the U.S. And in fact, there's some lawsuits in the works right now that the National Association of Realtors is defending, saying that the way the MLS system does it is actually harming consumers when actually the exact opposite is true, because you can prove that in countries that don't have an MLS, consumers pay a lot more for their real estate transactions than what you currently pay here in the U.S. And not saying there's a standard rate. Everybody negotiates differently, but
Sure.
as a rule, you end up paying a whole lot more in countries without an MLS because you pay each individual agent separately. You pay attorneys separately. Everything gets paid separately. Well, by the time you add it all up, it's a whole lot more.
In Mexico, Puerto Vallarta right now, I have somebody that's actually buying a house. It's 9% of the purchase price in fees.
Yeah.
wow.
9%.
Yeah. Well, that and the other thing that, and there's been multiple studies, and we're hoping to do one here locally in the next year or so. But Bright MLS, which is a huge MLS back east, they have over 100,000 subscribers in their MLS, and they cover 3 different states: Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, I believe. They did a study recently, an exhaustive study. They pulled all county records and compared them to MLS records. And they did an extensive study and proved that properties that are sold outside of going through the MLS sold for, on average, 15 to 17% less than properties that sell within the MLS, because they get so much more exposure to be able to get that highest and best
Right.
when they're in the MLS.
Yeah.
But to back up on how the compensation works. So real estate broker makes an agreement with a seller. The seller agrees to pay X percent to their real estate broker. That real estate broker is a member of the MLS. They go put the listing in the MLS and they say, I'm going to offer Y to a cooperating broker.
But that's a part of the listing agreement also, is what they're
Yes.
offering to.
Well, and
yeah.
the reason that's part of the listing agreement is so that the seller can be assured that this listing agent is going to be offering a fair compensation to draw in a buyer's agent to help.
So if it's 5%, they're not taking 4 and only offering 1%
Correct.
to the buyer's brokerage, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
So what's in that listing agreement is not the legally binding part to the cooperating broker. It's what gets put in the MLS. That's the legally binding offer of compensation. And that's why we say, okay, you can't put something there and then down in the remarks say, oh, but we're going to do this, this, and this to adjust the commission. No, you can't. No, what that field, that's your legally binding offer of compensation. So
can that be changed though at some point? Like I feel like, blockchain and crypto, you have a running ledger of when that changes. And in our in our lending, we have audit logs, right? So every time somebody goes into a loan file, it literally logs that somewhere and keeps that data chain.
No, there's absolutely nothing that prevents the two agents from negotiating something different outside of the MLS. But the key there is negotiating.
Right.
So you can't put something in the MLS as this is going to be the offer of compensation. That agent brings a buyer, and then you get to closing, and they're offering like 0.5% less than what was in the MLS without ever talking to the other person. That doesn't work.
And that's a reason that I tell newer agents as buyer's agents, like, hey, the day that you print out or you send in the offer, make sure you print out the MLS to put it in your folder.
Yep.
Right? Like, make sure you're seeing all the compensation, everything that's listed there. Like, just have it part of your
And also
file.
all the inclusions and exclusions. Yeah, everything.
Make it easy.
Yep.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy, Daniel.
No.
Okay.
Just listen. Yeah. Still want you to talk into this thing.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I'm looking at you like you're not talking to your mic.
Sorry, my bad.
That's all good. It is weird having something in your face like this. It is strange.
Yep.
Anyway, no, it's not crazy at all. So yeah,
No.
I just feel people don't protect themselves enough when it comes to their compensation. Like, that's why you're doing it. Like, you can say all the philanthropic reasons you want to.
Yeah.
That's why you're doing it.
Yeah. And that's how the buyer's agent gets paid. So, but that none of that happens unless a buyer comes along and they complete a successful transaction. So that's another thing I always caution agents: don't ever tell your buyers you work for free or that it costs them nothing to work with you. It does cost them; they just pay it through the transaction.
Yeah, it doesn't come out of their pocket directly, but they are the ones paying you.
Correct, and that's where that's one of the things that's unique about this system is because it's through the transaction. The buyer can finance it, meaning they don't have to bring nearly as much to the table as these countries where it's all separated out in this a la carte format. Right. And so, if you're a buyer in, I'll use an example, Ireland, I know because Colin Milan tells this story at events of his situation his mom went through trying to sell her property over there.
Colin, telling you, I've been trying to get you on here for a while. So, anyway.
Where by the time it was all said and done, I think she ended up paying close to 10% in fees because everything was parceled out and she couldn't finance. And, none of that could be financed. It all had to be cash at the table.
Yeah, it's hard.
So,
yeah. No, I've had several times where buyers will be like, "What do we owe you anything?" And I'm like, "No, you don't technically right now."
Right.
But I mean, you're going to buy the house. The seller's going to collect the proceeds. It's going to come out of the proceeds of the sale. That's how I get paid. But technically you're paying me, but it's just through them and back around. So it's just, Yeah. And
then those lawsuits I mentioned, their contention is that it harms the consumer because they don't understand how they're paying and they don't understand that they're paying more for the house because of these fees.
Commissions.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's tricky,
except that we can prove that your house will sell for 15 to 70% more when you use a realtor who puts it in the MLS. So I don't think you're gaining. You're not losing.
Yeah.
Well, so what about having it like a fee, like an owner's title policy? We, as lenders, have to put an owner's title policy on there, even if the seller's going to pay for it for disclosure purposes. Why not have that compensation listed on there and have it paid outside of closing or paid by the seller as far as, on our side of the forms?
What do you mean by that?
So when you take a look in the breakdown of fees that are on a loan, right?
On a settlement statement?
On a settlement statement or even on a closing disclosure, right?
Okay.
It's going to break down a lot of the fees and who actually pays those fees. Well, one of those fees is an owner's title policy for the title. Even though the seller is going to be paying that, we still have to disclose it on our documentation that if it was the buyer's or the buying agent's commission, that be listed on there as an item that was paid by the seller.
I mean, it's listed on a settlement statement.
No,
not for a buyer.
Not the buyer's, right? For
Just
the sellers,
just the total
is,
commission
right?
to the seller.
So I get a combined closing disclosure
Yeah.
where I see all of the sellers and I see all of the buyers. I can't forward that to the buyer, but I see that on every single transaction. Yeah. I see what the seller and the buyer are getting or coming to the table with. And so I see your guys' comp demands, right? Or what you're going to get paid on the seller side, but it's not on the buyers.
I hate that phrase, commission demand.
So do I.
Yeah.
It sounds very aggressive.
Yeah. I make it a point when title companies ask for the commission demand. I always like Remax's forms. It's called the principal broker instructions to escrow, and it has the escrow or the commission stuff on there. But I just hate that phrase. It just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
It's a comp demand.
Well,
Yeah.
there may be a day when that's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because I think there's 4 different national lawsuits happening right now that are all tied into the MLS structure and how you guys all get paid.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously we're all hoping that NAR prevails and our industry continues as great as it is. But even if they prevail, I think there's going to be some changes that we'll see, such as something like that possibly. But one of the things for all of you real estate agents out there, if you go to competition.realtor, it's a website that NAR has put together. It has a wealth of material that you can use when you're talking to your clients about the value of the MLS and the value of how we are structured and how it all works and how it actually benefits you as a consumer and does not harm you. So I encourage you to check it out.
Competition.realtor.
Correct.
All right. Put that on.
So on that same vein, do you think it will ever go a fee for service or an a la carte here? Like I personally, I see the value in real estate agents, right? I see what they offer and what they provide, especially people that are doing a great job for their clients. They're your therapist, they're your showing agent, they're your all these things combined. And I think a lot of times they're worth it, right? We in the lending industry, during Dodd-Frank, we got a haircut in our compensation. Big time, right?
Yeah.
Which was fine. It honestly was needed based on the amount of work that was going in. But I still feel like real estate agents do a good job for the money that they get. But I'm concerned that the consumers don't know that.
Right. I mean, you've always been able to, have a breakdown. That's a business model that's always been okay to do fees for service. But
I'm saying on a national level, do you think they're going to implement some sort of fee for service or a la carte where this gets broken up and the consumer is only compensating or paying a certain amount of that rather than a percentage?
So it might happen as a trend on the national level. The National Association of Realtors will never do that just because even right now, even though we're talking about the MLS and the structure that it is, that still doesn't limit you to only one type of business model. There can still be multiple, but even people who do the fee for service currently can put a listing in the MLS and say, this is the fee I'm paying. And it's not a percentage, it's a flat dollar amount. We can't tell somebody how to structure their business. As a trade association, that's just a big, gigantic no-no. We can't do that. So if it happens on a national level, it'll just be because it's a national trend, not because the NAR came out and said, you need to do business this way.
How come Fabrin always calls me and says, you can't do that?
Because he's just monitoring the data in the MLS.
I know. It's a shout out for Fabrin.
We can tell you what you can and can't do with the data. We can't tell you how to run your business.
I'm just busting Fabrin's chops over here because he's my boy. So he told you that. That's my nickname for him. Every time I hear him on the phone with Tiffany, you can't do that. He'll yell from the background. Love that dude.
Kind of like photoshopping pictures.
Yeah. So here,
or my favorite. I have to tell you my favorite one because this happened not too long ago,
and
I wanted to hear. Hopefully they're not listening. But somebody actually, it was a listing with a south-facing view, and they photoshopped in Mount McLaughlin. And
so I don't see the problem with that.
Quite hilarious, and it was so obviously photoshopped. Was the really hilarious part, but yeah.
So are inflatable dinosaurs allowed in MLS pictures?
they sure are.
Sure.
Yes.
I saw one with a tiger. It was weird. Like I was just scrolling through it. It looked like somebody had photoshopped like a tiger into a backyard.
If it was on the river, no, there was literally like a statue of a tiger that looked.
It wasn't,
real.
but I've seen that. But no,
You've
it
seen
wasn't
that
that.
one.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
That's pretty funny. I do, real quick, I wanted to go back because I'm making fun of Fabrin, right? And so Fabrin has that job of calling people all the time and telling them he can't do that. And he's often, I'm sure he's often referred to as a jerk or whatever because he's telling people that they can't
The
do that.
MLS police.
The MLS police, you know? Nobody likes the police. I'm just I love the police. I just want you to know.
That better make a reel or a clip or something. Please, Danny, post it yourself. If he doesn't, Danny, do it yourself.
Do it yourself, Danny. Danny's going to post it on the internet. Great. No. But I wanted to go back to that because this is why I think it's so important for people to go and network with other real estate brokers or just go to networking events and build relationships with other people in the industry. Because I didn't know Fabrin other than just the guy that the police. He shows up and tells you can't do that, and you know you got to change it, and this and all this and all that. But I went to the NAR conference in San Diego, and you had that Oregon or Southern some SOMLS get together, RVAR get together, and I got a chance to sit down with Fabrin and have a few drinks and just talk, and then now he's a homie,
right?
And he's a buddy. So it's like every time I see him, I always give him a hard time, but we always laugh about that. And I talked to him yesterday about something that I was doing, and it's just it's just a much easier conversation when we know who each other are,
right?
And it's just so much better, and it makes your real estate transactions better. Not
I'm
just
always scared to call him because whenever I call him, it's because I messed up. I'm like, I just put it on the MLS. It says it's been there for a week. Like, what'd I do?
Damn it, Lasky, you did that again?
No, that was when I first started, like in my first month, and I haven't called him in a long time. But yeah,
sorry. God, I had to get you on that one. Sorry.
I think we need to fact check that.
Yeah, that's a tricky little thing, that days on market thing for sure, and how
Yeah.
you put that in. You got to do that just right. There's a couple little tweaks that you got to. I see people do all the time that will do like Main Street,
Yep.
because they're putting Main Street in the big field and they don't do the street suffix or whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Northwest. Yeah.
Northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah. So all those little things, but that's why I just think it's so important to go and build those relationships. So,
it is. Yeah. And the staff. Because Fabrin, a lot of times people think he's just the MLS police, and poor Mason, who's our bookkeeper, think they only hear from him if they haven't paid their bill, and the staff is actually, we're all there to help you guys do your business, and so get to know us because it's not us and them, it's we're all in it together.
Yeah.
So
you're here to help us for sure.
Yep.
So that's cool. What do you got, Doyle?
Well, I was going to say, like, meeting people and having individuals in the industry get together, would you say that that's a struggle for you, and getting involvement and getting people out of the routine to help join and figure out who their fellow coworkers are?
So coming out of COVID, it's been a huge struggle. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, we want in-person stuff back. We want in-person stuff back." But as soon as we schedule something, nobody comes. So it's just taking time to get the momentum back again and getting people to place importance on it again, because during COVID, when those things weren't happening, it's not that you all just had a whole bunch of spare time. It got filled in with other things.
Right. Yeah.
So now these things are coming back, because it happened to me too. So now these things are coming back, and it's like, okay, well, so do I got to give up something I had started doing in order to fit that in now? So it's just it's
retooling,
realigning, refiguring things out. So it'll take time, but it'll come. I mean, we had, the dessert auction we mentioned earlier was completely sold out. So we obviously didn't have a hard time getting people to come to that.
Right.
So
there was alcohol there.
Exactly.
Well, so that was going to say, so tour for the Grants Pass tour, there was more lenders than agents there, but maybe alcohol solves it. So
that's
at 9:00 in the morning.
It was his idea.
No, I have my own opinion on tour. So I mean, this is actually a good topic. I'd be curious to hear your opinion on this, because I do think that tour is important, not to actually go see the listings, but more importantly, just to interact with the other real estate brokers than anything else. But I don't find touring houses is helpful in our business anymore. Like, it used to be that going on tour was incredibly important when you had the book, right? Because anytime that you had a client walk into your office, you could be like, oh, I've been in this house, I've done this, and you could talk intelligently about it. But now people do all their shopping on the internet. You know, they're using the big Z word, or they're using Realtor.com or Truly or whatever.
Right.
They're using all those things to look at houses. And so to me, it's not as important to find the houses and know where the houses are anymore. I do think there's some advantages to it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm just saying our job has changed. And so going on tour is not on the top of my priority list on things to do. I'd much rather go and network at a dessert auction, or go to the RVR barbecue, or be involved with the board of directors, or go to Realtor Day at the Capitol, where I feel like I'm getting more bang for my buck than going on tour. That's just my opinion.
I agree with your opinion, actually. But what I think is important that most people don't realize with the tour is that there is a tour meeting preceding the tour. And even if you only go to the meeting and don't actually go on the tour, that's exactly the stuff you were just talking about. Because you get a bunch of the realtors in a room, and they can...
Or lenders.
And they can share, talk about buyers' needs they have that, maybe they're just not finding it. And somebody goes, oh, you know what? I got one coming up that's going to fit that. It's a chance to, network. Or even if they don't have something coming up, they're now on the lookout for you.
Right.
So it's that chance to connect. It's that chance to network, like you were saying. So go to the meeting, even if you don't actually go out on the tour.
Right.
Because I do agree. The way people shop has changed. You look at the pictures online, and yes, we all know that, pictures don't tell the whole story. You can see pictures, but the houses have feelings. There's vibes, and you can get to a house and you go, well, it looked really cute online, but this is not the layout I wanted. Just because it's hard when you're just looking at pictures, it's hard to imagine the actual flow.
Right.
So, it's still important to go to homes, but I don't think you necessarily need to go tour them ahead of time like you used to when you had the book and that was your only chance to see them. I agree.
Yeah.
But I actually believe the meeting is the most important part of it. And even if you only come to that and don't actually go out on the tour, then you get the benefit.
Yeah.
So
No, I believe you. I'm sure there's one of the things that I've always talked about too is how I think it's really cool. It would be really cool if you could just be a fly on the wall in the room with other real estate brokers, just kind of learning how people talk about stuff. So even, I could imagine there's some advantages of going on tour with some agents who you don't normally interact with, kind of see how they look at houses and how they talk about certain things. I'm sure that could be an advantage for, picking up little tidbits about stuff.
Right.
Good and bad, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, forgot where I was going with that, or where we were going.
Well, so I was just saying, as far as the gatherings and people and coming back after COVID, right, has been a bit of a challenge.
It has been. So even with the education classes, everybody got sick of Zoom. We all got sick of Zoom. Horribly sick of Zoom.
That's the other bad Z word.
Yeah.
We can say that though. They're not a competitor.
Right. And they all said, we want in-person classes back. We want in-person classes back. So we started scheduling all these in-person classes, and we'd have 4 people show up.
Yep.
And a whole bunch of people going, where's the Zoom link? I'm not going to make it in person. Where's the Zoom link? Well,
why? So you can sit it and have it in your background while you eat your lunch and don't pay attention at all?
Yep.
With a blurred background.
Right?
Stupid, yeah.
So, that too, the momentum is building. We had a LARC, which stands for Law and Rule Required Course. For those of you listening who don't know, it's a required course that all real estate brokers have to take every 2 years. And we had an in-person session of that class. We had it once here in Grants Pass and then once in Medford. And between the 2 sessions, had 100 people show up.
Wow.
It's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
It's the biggest classes we've had in forever.
But it's the required one.
It's the required one, exactly.
Yeah. It's either required or it has alcohol. So there's
There you go.
Yeah. Come on, people.
Maybe you need to make it required to have alcohol.
There you go.
I'll see you in August, Daniel.
What's going on in August? Oh, yeah. Got it. Tough Mudder. Yeah.
Tough Mudder. Yeah.
Got it. All
So
right.
what about having an ambassador? And I think they have those for other things, but if you had each office, right? So I can't say the names of the offices for real estate here, or I'm going to get bleeped out again. But what if you had an ambassador or 2 ambassadors from each office that were kind of your delegates to help in gaining momentum and doing things like that?
That's what the principal brokers are for.
Don't forget to talk into your mic.
Is this thing on?
Well,
Okay, so wait, explain that.
Daniel can attest to this because we've
talked about this
did
already.
a day and a half long strategic planning session back in October with our boards of directors. And a lot of the conversation was on how do we get the engagement, and a lot of it was around the fact that we've got to get the managing brokers to start talking to their agents and sharing the word.
Right. Encouraging them to educate themselves. And
Correct.
And because if they go to these classes and they learn these things and they interact with other real estate brokers, it's likely there's going to be less ethics violations and less complaints and all that kind of stuff. And it's
You'll have better and more informed agents.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that's why they have the managing broker forums, and that's
Yep.
why they encourage all that. So, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But also to your point, we have had conversations too about the fact that sometimes the managing broker is not the best one to engage.
Correct. Agreed. If you have a cheerleader and it's not the
Right.
managing, right?
So, it's identifying that person and then somehow engaging them. And that is something that is on our radar, is just finding the bandwidth to actually implement it.
So one of my mentors once, I was talking to him about, man, I only have so much opportunity to get my older kids to go on vacation with me. So I got to make everything, out of it. And he looked at me, he said, no, Dan, you just have to up the vacations. You have to up the ante to get them to want to come. So I think it's kind of a shared responsibility, right? It's making sure that it's something that's tangible for the agents that they want to do or have to do. Doesn't matter, but getting those other individuals involved to be able to also come and foster,
Yep.
Partnerships.
Yeah. And so we actually have kind of revamped our education approach this year. We're still offering a lot of virtual classes, but we're mixing in a lot of in-person classes. And one of the things we're trying actually came out of a conversation I had with Daniel. When was that?
Shout out to Daniel.
Yeah.
in San Diego.
Well, it started in San Diego, but then we went to lunch up here. But it was the idea of doing quarterly, intensive education summits, we're calling them, sometimes it's just, I would love to come to the class, but I can't take 2 hours out of the middle of my day to go do that. But if you could carve out a day and a half and you could knock out 7 or 8 hours worth of education in that one time frame, people would come.
Right.
So we're trying that approach this year. Our first one is actually coming up June 15th and 16th. We partnered with Oregon Realtors to do it. It's going to be at the Ashland Hills Inn in Ashland. Day and a half. We've got Trista Kurzidlo. I never can say her last name right. She's a national speaker, amazing national speaker, really funny. But she's coming. She's going to do 2 sessions for us. And then after that, we've got a bunch of sessions. We've got a legal panel. We're going to have, discussions, the ever popular Southern Oregon topic of cannabis in real estate.
There's an ADU forum, I think, too. Isn't that on the same one? The accessory dwelling units? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the agenda right here sitting here, but yeah, so we're trying that too. So just trying to offer, as we've talked about, people don't all get things the same way these days. There's so many different delivery vehicles for information these days that you can't just continue to do it the same way you've always done it and expect people to get it. So we're trying to mix it up and deliver. So we're doing some virtual classes, the shorter in-person classes, but then the longer in-person summits, and just trying to mix it up and see what basically we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Well, I mean,
I think that's great.
if you're not evolving and not trying to do new things, then it's going to tank. It's not going to succeed. You got to do new things. Everybody learns differently, like you're saying.
Yep.
So no, it's good. I'm glad we're doing that. And then doing the CRS class in September too, which will be really good too. And CRS classes, there's 2 of them in there.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So while we're on this topic of conversation, because we're talking about education, what do you think are the 5 things? You've been around realtors for a long time, right? So you kind of understand what makes a successful realtor and what doesn't. What do you think of the 5 most essential things a realtor needs to do in order to be successful in this business?
Number 1, be willing to work hard. I've done enough of the new member orientations now over the years that I can almost predict who's going to make it and who's not during that class, just by the questions they ask and the way I can tell they're approaching their business, the ones who come in and have the mindset of, I am starting my own business and whether or not this succeeds is entirely on me. Those who come in with that mindset and are willing to do the hard work, they'll make it.
Okay.
The ones who come in and go, well, I'm just going to kind of do this on the side and keep my full-time job and I'm just going to do this on the side till I build my clientele. Well, the problem is you're never going to build your clientele because you're not putting in the work, because you're straddling the fence. And all you do when you straddle the fence is get a whole lot of slivers in uncomfortable places. So
all up in your business. Wood slivers up in your business. Yeah. All right. So
that number one.
So that's number one. You get business in your number one.
You gotta be willing
and
to work
sometimes
hard.
in your number two.
Right.
All right. So number two.
Gotta be willing to work hard.
Okay.
Number two, what we've already touched on, be willing to build relationships because that's how you build trust and that's how you'll succeed. No matter what technology you're using. Relationships with your clients and with your fellow industry professionals, whether that's brokers, appraisers, inspectors, lenders, whoever.
Right.
Build those relationships.
Got it.
Let's see, number three. I'm trying to remember what I put because you asked me this.
Should I printed you one out
You
also?
could put number 3, work hard. It could be in both 1 and 3.
How about have healthy boundaries between work and personal?
That I will say too, because even though you need to be willing to work hard, you also have to remember that, especially if you have a family, that you got to make time for them too.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, you can't take calls at 11 o'clock at night and be trying to do real estate deals at 11 o'clock at night.
Guilty. Not anymore, but guilty. First couple years.
You gotta form those boundaries because you're gonna burn out. If you don't, you're gonna burn out.
Yeah.
So
We've talked about healthy boundaries, and Dan's over there like going like this, but Dan does take calls. Yeah, but Dan is like, I think he's the king at being regimented with his time, his personal time, and in fact his daughter's sitting in the next room over right now because he's supposed to have a daddy-daughter day, so he's here with me. But he does that for me. I'm like his.
Shout out to Cheyenne.
Thanks for coming, Cheyenne. Oh, God, I'm gonna get in so much trouble for that. Thanks, Dan. Anyway, okay, but Dan, Danny. He's just the king of having those healthy boundaries and making those boundaries. We've talked about it before on the podcast, but but
everybody needs to learn their own style. I think that's probably so. The springboard of that is, I respect Robin's schedule. It's not everybody's schedule, but it works with his family dynamic. And when he comes in, and you would never know that he actually spends as much time with his family than he does because he does it in interesting hours that may not work for everybody.
Right.
And I think that's the problem is people aren't flexible to look at their reality and their life and say, I can do both.
Right.
It may not look like a textbook answer. That's the problem. I think a lot of real estate agents come into this and go, oh, I'm supposed to fit this bucket or this bucket. Or make your own damn bucket.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to the Cheyenne thing too, like
I was just kidding.
I know you were just kidding, but I think it's important for everybody to know that she determined that she's setting boundaries. Like Thursday's her day. It's the day that she doesn't have childcare. It's the day that her husband has off most of the time. Mm-hmm. So that's just her day. Right. So it's just
respect.
Yeah, respect on it, and I'm not trashing her on it at all. Like that's just what it is. She's setting those boundaries, which is huge.
And even to what I said earlier, if somebody's coming in and they do still have another job while they're trying to build this one, that may work for them, as long as their mindset is to commit to this new job, and they're not just going, it's a hobby and I'll let it build on its own, because it won't build on its own. Mm-hmm. It takes effort. But I think that's an excellent point, because there is no magic formula as to what the boundaries should look like. No. Everybody's got to figure out their own.
Yeah. Robin, can I ask you a sidebar question? Because you had said it takes effort and all that stuff. So taking a look, because you're almost coming up on your 2-year anniversary in the industry, was it more or less effort than you thought it was going to be getting into this? So when she says work hard, how does that resonate with you?
I've always been a hard worker, so I feel like I'm still, I feel like I'm right where I should be. I mean, definitely work hard. I definitely have to tell myself sometimes, like, are you working hard enough? Like, did you put in enough hours today, or are you just going home early because you can? Right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. I mean, a little bit, but even though you're a hard worker, was it harder or easier than you thought it was going to be in the first 2 years?
I didn't really know what I was looking into.
Robin has so many words for everything, guys. It's awe-inspiring.
I would say that it's probably harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I did other sales positions, so I understood the idea of sales, but this is not sales. This is
This is customer service to the next level.
It is. It's being there for everything. And so I would say that it's harder, but I don't feel surprised by it being harder. Like,
I think
it's glad that it is.
Yeah, I think it's harder and almost more rewarding because of how hard it is. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. When I got into this, I didn't think it would be as hard as it is, but it also doesn't feel like it's so. I feel like I'm kind of resonating with what you're trying to say, but I'd have a hard time putting it into words. Like, it's just.
It was harder than you thought it would be, but in some instances, it's not as hard. It's almost like it's twofold.
It's really rewarding doing what we do when you do it at a high level. Like, I could see how if you struggle at it or if you don't do a lot of business, I could see how this would be a really hard job, because you can put in a lot of hours and not get a lot out of it, but you can also put in a lot of hours and get a ton out of it. It just kind of depends. So, I mean, that's a commission-based job, right? So it's like, it's an incredibly hard job, but it also can be super rewarding. You can go on vacation with your family while you're still running your business, and you can come back to a business that's still fully functioning and running like nothing ever happened, and you can't necessarily do that if you have another job, you know.
It's definitely not 9 to 5.
No.
In any way.
No. I mean, we're talking about like working hard or at least setting boundaries. Like, I started doing this new thing where I literally come in at 6 a.m. Like, I'm in my office in my chair at 6, and I try to leave here at 3. And oftentimes, because I am who I am, I sit here until 5. But it's
or later. Yeah.
Or later sometimes.
Or come back for a second shift.
Or to come back for So it's funny. The first week that I started doing that, I had like three days back to back where I was here until 8 o'clock, which is very unusual for me to be here till 8 o'clock anyway. It was just kind of happened, but it was the first week where I came in at 6 a.m. I'm like, man, this is a bad idea, but I kept with it. But that's just how I function. It's just better for me that way. And I know that there's people who don't. They get up at 9 or 10 or whatever, but they work later into the evenings. And so it's finding what works for you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
For sure. Okay, so number 1 was
work hard.
work hard.
Work hard.
Number 2,
Build relationships.
number 3, kind of find balance.
Setting the boundaries. Yeah.
Keep the splinters out of your ass. Oh, that's wrong.
That was number 1.
That was number 1. Oh, okay. Straddle the fence. Got it.
That's number 1 in my book.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
regardless if
gonna
it's
live
number
that
1 on
one down.
yours, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised
That's ground
you missed
zero,
the
but-
sparkle squirrels or whatever she said earlier. I thought you were going to jump on every squirrel.
Sparkle squirrels?
Yeah,
Shiny squirrels.
Shiny squirrels.
I must have missed that.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Did you guys hear about that squirrel though? That no? Mm-mm. No? That put glitter all over his all over his balls? Did you know?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Pretty nuts, right? I think I got that joke wrong, but I saw it on Instagram.
That's even too risque for a dad joke. Like, that needs to be bleeped out, Danny. I feel uncomfortable.
I don't know. I'm going to go home and tell it to my son.
I'm not going to tell that to my daughter who's in the next room. Okay, so number 4.
What did I put? I answered all these on that, and I can't remember now what I put.
I don't know. I just have pretty nuts running through my head.
Be both professional and
yes.
personable.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, there's that balance. You got to be professional. You got to know what you're doing.
You can't tell sparkly nut jokes when you're trying to be a professional.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Because you're you. We'll let that one pass.
My podcast, all right?
Hey, she started with straddling fences.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I
Pulling
mean, come
splinters
on.
out of your undercarriage.
No, so know your stuff and operate as a professional. But at the same, don't have a, I guess the best way to put it, don't have a bad bedside manner. Mm-hmm. Also be personable. Because this is a relationship business, you got to be personable.
And it's a service business.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you got to be, you're providing a service, so you got to be personable, but at the same time professional, because if you're not professional, then people aren't going to respect that you actually know what you're doing.
Right. This business requires a lot of trust
It does.
in us, in him as the mortgage person. And I think in order to build that trust, you have to have a certain level of professionalism, but also be so personable that people can relate to you and they feel like they can trust you.
Yes. Because for the majority of your clients, this is the biggest financial transaction they will do.
Right.
I mean, they may do it more than once in their life, but it's still the biggest financial decision they make.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So I brought this up a couple of times, and it's actually more appropriate having you here than any other ones. I think to have a good bedside manner, you have to be empathetic or sympathetic to your client and what they're going through and their plight.
Correct.
So we've talked about this several times, that I think that agents and lenders should have to go through a mock purchase or sale every 2 years. I would even extend that to every 3 years, but I would absolutely love to see that your principal broker has to do this mock transaction, and you have to go through it. You have to sign all the paperwork. You have to do everything. That way you cannot be so far removed from what your buyers and sellers are going through that you lose that empathy for what they're doing. Like it's just drives me batty, because I think that's where you get the shitty bedside manner, is because they're so removed and displaced from it. They don't care.
Yeah.
You're not only are you just a paycheck to that individual, but they don't know how it feels to be in your shoes. So they just don't, and they don't care.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Might be an education class in the making there, huh?
Yeah. Mock purchase. yeah. For sure.
Run it.
All right, and then you actually wrote 6 down, but I'm going to count number 6 as probably as the first part. So number 6 you wrote down as being a business owner.
Yeah, that kind of ties in with
that kind of ties into number 1, right? But number 5 you wrote down as never compromise your integrity for a paycheck, which is actually one of our Bufano home team principles in more words or less. Ours is there's no amount of commission dollars out there worth sacrificing your own reputation, your relationships that you have with other people, or any of that stuff. So it's
yeah. And I've heard Scott Lewis, who was on our board for a while, his one of his phrases is always, "Don't be afraid to fire them." It's you can fire them just as easy as they can fire you.
Right.
I mean, if you have a client that is going to absolutely cause a risk to, cause you a risk to lose your license, which would be your livelihood. And
well, that would be the number one reason to fire a client.
Right. But also just your reputation or even just your own personal, if they're causing you to lose sleep because they are stressing you out so much, that might be one you want to rethink.
Yeah. We talked about this with Lisa Kelly and just connecting with people. Actually, Lisa Kelly owns Kelly's Automotive here in town, but she's a local business owner. But we were talking about, she's a DISC certified coach, and she talked about making connections with her employees and just people like that in general, and networking in the community. If you don't have a connection with your client, like if it's just not working and it's hard to communicate, it's hard to do all that kind of stuff, it's causing stress, then it's probably not worth your time, because it's only going to get harder as things get more stressful.
Yep.
So
it'll probably just fall apart in the end anyways. And
very well could.
Well, and more than likely, and this goes back to the being a professional thing, the client may be feeling as awkward and bad about it as you are. And if you approach them and say, we are just not connecting, do you want me to refer you out to someone? They might really respect that and value that.
Please?
Right?
I was so scared to tell you suck. God, I didn't want to hurt your feelings.
But that's such a split, thing when somebody sees dollar signs dancing in front of them, right, and then doing what's right by the client. We can say that relatively easy as individuals who are successful or time or whatever behind our belt. Be like, it's not worth the paycheck to me. But there's people that haven't closed anything since August that I know of. Oh yeah, personally, right?
Well, and I've had people say that to me. Well, you've never actually been an agent, so that's easy for you to say. Well, yeah, I know that. But the question was, what have I seen over the years?
Yeah.
And I've seen this in play more than once, and I've seen people that have backed out of client relationships that were just causing a lot of harm. And, in many cases, they ended up doing better for it because then their own stress levels and their own mental state improved, which allowed them to serve the other clients they had even better, and made them more successful in that respect. But I've also seen the reverse where people stuck it out just because they were so desperate. And I get it. They were so desperate for that paycheck because they hadn't had a deal since August.
Right.
In some ways, sometimes it turns out okay, but in other cases, they're the ones that end up sitting across the table from us at an ethics hearing.
Right. Yeah.
So, or getting, I mean, at the very minimal, getting a bad Google review or something that, somebody's saying bad things to you or to other people in the community. I mean, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that dovetails into the fact of don't spend your commission check before you get it, please. Like, I know that's super tough and I totally understand that. But if you don't tie your finances to the outcome of that transaction, you're going to have a lot more latitude on being able to, no paycheck is ever worth it, ethics, morals, all of that stuff. But you're going to have an easier time if you haven't pre-spent that check to be able to leave it at the door and say, this is not the right one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
All great advice. So anyway, we've talked for quite a while now. I told you it'd only take about an hour. So I just want to wrap this up just by saying thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think there's a lot of great information here for people.
I know I learned a lot.
Yeah, no, I think I learn something every time when we sit down with somebody. It's just it's a pleasure doing this. That's the selfishness of it that I get out of it, as I get to learn and I get to just interact with people, and it's really fun. But hopefully it'll help somebody else out there. I think that's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
So really appreciate your expertise in all of these things, because there's nobody that knows RVAR or at least local associations and multiple listing services better than you. At least I know in this area. So I just I appreciate your insight on all of that, and just how to create a successful business. It'll be helpful to somebody. So
Well,
a lot
I'm
of
glad.
people.
And
Hopefully.
it was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very cool. Thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.
I think that's about it for now.
All right.
Maybe part 2 in the future.
Sounds
Probably
good.
more to talk about.
Probably. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Tina.